Hello. So I'm going to speak about FECRIS. I don't know if you're familiar with this organization. It's the European Federation of Centers for Research and Information on Sectarianism. That's what they call it, sectarianism, the study of sects. So FECRIS has 3 member associations in France, all financed nearly entirely by the French state, and for over 90% of their budget is coming from the state. FECRIS itself has been financed for over 92%, an average 92% ratio of public funds compared to private memberships since 2001 by the French government. So I will give here a brief overview of how FECRIS and its French anti-sect associations were created in order to give you an idea of their background ideology. And then I will address the legal problems that their activities pose. In the 1980s, private anti-sect associations started to appear in France, created by parents who disagreed with the choice of their overage adult children to join religious minorities, religious or belief minorities. Such was the case of UNATFI, the National Union of Associations of Defense of the Family and the Individual, and of CCMM, the Center Against Mental Manipulations. So UNATFI, the first association for the defense of the family and the individual, was created in France in 1974 by Dr. Champollion, whose son of 18 joined the Unification Church, also called the Moonies. Dr. Champollion and his wife studied the basic books of the group, of the church, the Unification Church, and they disagreed with the beliefs that were outlined in the books because they didn't match, they contradicted their own beliefs. In particular, concerning the history of humanity and the interpretation of the Bible. So Mr. and Mrs. Champollion started to meet other parents whose children, overage children, had joined the Unification Church, and they started to have long discussions with their children, Bible in hand, to try to have them recant their newly acquired faith. As these followers were all overage, they were adults legally, it was not possible to launch any legal action, and this is why they created the first ATFI, Association for the Defense of Family and the Individual, to lobby public authorities against this particular group, the Unification Church. The first articles of association of ATFI in 1974 provided as object: this association aims at maintaining and defending all the family values, in particular, the unity and cohesion of the family. And then they added by hand, and the respect of the individual. So the defense of family values is indeed the core of ATFI's fight and its raison d'être. The claim that unity and cohesion of the family is undermined when family members are enticed into new religious movements, away from the beliefs and values shared by the family. Eventually, respect of the individual has been included in ATFI's Articles of Association and later replaced in 1975 by integrity of the individual. The idea that Dr. Champollion's son's integrity had been violated by his conversion to the Unification Church, although he was overage and never recanted his faith subsequently, has set the path for ATFI's concept of victims, as applied to followers of religious or belief minorities, based on the idea that those followers have been manipulated or are under subjection. Soon, Atfi included other sects such as Krishna, Guru Maharaji, etc. Conversion to such beliefs was considered by Atfi as an infringement of human integrity and even dignity. Then we have CCMM, the Center Against Mental Manipulations. It was created in 1981 by Roger Icor, whose 20-year-old son adhered to a macrobiotic Zen lifestyle and later committed suicide. Roger Icor blamed macrobiotic Zen for his suicide, and this determined his subsequent fight against sects and his violent approach of such a phenomenon. He declared, "We have to destroy these sects which proliferate on our decay. When enough people go to ransack the premises of sects, they, public authorities, will probably move." He added that he wanted to throw up macrobiotic restaurants, Krishna centers, and others, and that then maybe public authorities would pay more attention. Roger Icor openly claimed to be a free thinker, libre penseur, or atheistic. He had a very cynical approach to religious beliefs, whether sects or recognized religions. He stated in Les Cahiers Rationalistes, Rationalist Journal, in 1980, "Truly, what is striking more than the theoretical differences between sects is their common features. 9 times out of 10, you have a founding father, a guy who comes forward and claims with conviction, 'I'm the Son of God. I received the revelation.' In brief, God talked to him from behind a pillar, or in a cave, or near his sheep. Possible variations: instead of being God's son, he is the Messiah, his Messiah, or at least his prophet. Between you and me, on all of these points, we could find famous precedents: Muhammad, the Christ, Moses. No, there isn't between a sect and a religion a difference of nature, or rather of principle. There is only a difference of degree and dimensions. If it was up to us, we would put an end to all of these nonsense, those of sects, but also those of big religions." Created with this ideology, end of quote, created with this ideology, CCMM's objective is, quote, "to oppose any action, collective or individual, aimed at, by any means, penetrating, subjecting, or enslaving people's minds." It's a bit like, I think somebody said that religion is the opium of the people or something like that. That's his conception. It's like subjecting or enslaving people's minds. Alleging that freedom goes together with critical mind, CCMM describes its role as that of informing, educating, and alerting the public on minorities of religion or belief. To this end, they feel entitled to assess the doctrines of minorities of religion or belief in order to determine if the very nature of these beliefs makes the targeted group a sect. Lately, CCMM developed a new sector of activities: the psycho-deviances in Christian religions, and posted a call for testimonies on its website in order to, quote, "gather direct and collateral victims of deviances observed in the Christian religions." It assigned itself the mission to, quote, "be a proposition force with the ecclesiastical and political authorities, to provide them with indisputable arguments and to give them the means to act and take their responsibilities." This call for testimonies is telling. First, because it shows that CCMM is missing testimonies on such deviances and has to look for some. And second, because it reveals that CCMM feels invested with the mission of attacking religious groups for alleged psycho-deviances while being financed by public funds. Then we have GEMPI, the third one. So GEMPI stands for Study Group on Movements of Thought for the Prevention of the Individual. Movements of thought is also, I think, worldviews. It's the term for it. It was founded in 1988 and has one permanent member, one, who pursues its activities with the public funding. It's its president, who is also the treasurer of FECRIS. GEMPI is devoted to the critical analysis of the creeds of minorities of religion or belief. As part of its study on movements of thought, GEMPI drafted in 1995 a list of 173 sects, which was included in a parliamentary report on sects. This list has been strongly criticized. It included humanist, Buddhist, evangelical, and even Catholic groups, some. And French courts ruled that it had no legal value. The French Prime Minister in May 2005 issued instructions to state services to stop stigmatizing a number of movements as sects and to stop using any kind of list of sects anymore. Nevertheless, GEMPI continues to label minority faiths as sects and openly claims to assess beliefs while being financed by public funds. Its stated purpose is, quote, the study of new belief, I insist on new, the study of new beliefs, help, information, and prevention against sects. This is its official purpose. It describes itself as a defender of consumers specialized in religious faith. It claims that, quote, its action allowed to balance information about new religious movements, as these movements have a strong tendency to proselytize and to do business, so they use advertising. Hence, GEMPI claims that its role is to provide critical information on new religious movements so the consumer is not duped. The question is, how can public funds be used for such a purpose? It's not the role of the state, through state funding organizations, to advise people on what they should believe or not. Then, lastly, we come to FECRIS itself. So the FECRIS is the umbrella organization over these anti-sect associations. So under the lobby of these private anti-sect organizations, France started financing them and also started to finance a French initiative of a European federation to gather similar groups in various EU countries. FECRIS was created in Paris in 1994 at the initiative of UNATFI. UNATFI registered FECRIS under French law with the official purpose to federate anti-sect associations throughout Europe and represent them before European institutions for the defense of families and individuals against, quote, harmful sectarian organizations. Although this purpose sounds laudable, a deeper analysis evidences that the anti-sect affiliates of FECRIS in France, first, characterize as sectarian any minority religious or spiritual movement with belief that FECRIS deems deviant from, quote, what is usually considered as religion. Second, they consider the sect affiliates of FECRIS consider conversion to these faiths as undue influence or, quote, capture of souls, and an infringement of human dignity. 3, they collect testimonies from families or relatives of followers who disagree with their choice of life to accuse them of family breakups. 4, they compile files based on rumors, innuendo, and suspicion, which are used to stigmatize these groups. And 5, they continue to be financed by the French public institutions to wage an ideological crusade. These issues raise serious concerns regarding freedom of conscience and the state's duty of neutrality in matters of religion or belief, both under the French Constitution and the principle of laïcité, secularism, separation of church and state, and respect for all creeds, and international human rights treaty, United Nations ones, and the European Convention on Human Rights. If the state finances nearly entirely organizations like FECRIS and its members, then these organizations are bound by the same duty of neutrality as the French state. Otherwise, the state is evading its obligation by financing private organizations to pursue its ideological fight. At the OSCE Human Dimension Implementation meeting held in Warsaw in September 2009, FECRIS gave the following definition of cults or sects. I'm quoting, most cults pose as religions or faith organizations. Those who FECRIS regard as cults share the following characteristics. They recruit their members using deception, retain them by various forms of manipulation and mental bullying, and exploit them for financial or other benefit to the cult's leadership. The questions which arise here are, when should proselytizing for or converting to a faith be considered a deception? When should the continued adherence to a faith be considered a manipulation? When should donations to or volunteering for the group be considered exploitation? Actually, the concept of deception could be applied to any faith by non-believers. This concept could be applied to the miracles believed to have occurred in the Catholic religion, for example, or by apostates who have renounced their faith. So could the concepts of manipulation and exploitation. Applying this concept would imply making value judgments on beliefs which are inadmissible from a state-funding organization under the French Constitution, which guarantees that the Republic respects all creeds equally. Such assessment of beliefs is also inadmissible under Article 9 of the European Convention on Human Rights and Article 18 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, both signed and ratified by France. In a landmark decision, Jehovah's Witnesses of Moscow versus Russia of 10 June 2010, the European Court of Human Rights reminded its contents jurisprudence in this regard. The court further reiterates, I'm quoting, that the state's duty of neutrality and impartiality prohibits it from assessing the legitimacy of religious beliefs or the ways in which those beliefs are expressed or manifested. Accordingly, the state has a narrow margin of appreciation and must advance serious and compelling reasons for an interference with the choices that people may make in pursuance of the religious standard of behavior within the sphere of their personal autonomy. And in this case, the court found that the members of Jehovah's Witnesses of Moscow had testified in the proceedings that they follow the doctrines and practices of Jehovah's Witnesses of their own free will, and that, then I stress, I underline, there is no generally accepted and scientific definition of what constitutes mind control. This is why I said it was a landmark decision. This is the European Court speaking. There's no generally accepted and scientific definition of what constitutes mind control. Consequently, no interference of the Russian state with their choice of life could be admitted, with a choice of life for Jehovah's Witnesses, could be admitted under the convention, and the court ruled that Russia violated Article 9. Contrary to this jurisprudence of the European Court of Human Rights, FECRIS and its member associations consider that some beliefs and doctrines are degrading to the individual in themselves, and that the adherence to them can only result from mental manipulation. Following their reasoning, consenting followers must have lost their own free will. Going even further, FECRIS president asserted at the OSCE in September 2009 that cults or sects are not religions or even belief organizations. In a series of cases relating to the substantive right to freedom of religion and belief under the European Convention, the European Court has made clear that the state cannot attempt to prescribe what constitutes a religion or belief, and that these notions protect also, as was said before, atheists, agnostics, skeptics, and the unconcerned, thus protecting those who choose to hold or not to hold religious belief and to practice or not to practice a religion. The European Court has elaborated on the idea of belief and stated that the term beliefs appearing in Article 9 denotes views that attain a certain level of cogency, seriousness, cohesion, and importance. Therefore, as long as religious or belief minorities share views with some consistency, persistence, and cohesion, compared to Article 10, when it's mere opinions, freedom of expression. In Article 9, it has to be to show consistency, persistence, and cohesion. It's a system of belief. No state, no public institution, and no government-subsidized organization like FECRIS can decide that these views are not real beliefs. In the absence of actual crimes being committed, the stigmatization of religious minorities based on mere value judgments on beliefs is inadmissible, and the French state should stop financing such activities. Now, I'm going to do the liaison with Willy Foutré's speech, because another problem with FECRIS financing is that it is a melting pot of associations throughout Europe, with various, even contradictory vested interests, which see an opportunity, I want to say one word, an opportunity to fight against religious minorities. In particular, FECRIS member associations support dominant churches in various countries and help them fight against religious minorities they see as competitors. Such is the case, for example, in Russia. This is what I wanted to say, because he's not going to mention it. Such is the case, for example, in Russia, where FECRIS centers are rehabilitation centers. You will find all the details of what I'm saying now are in the book. Can you show the book, Massimo or Thierry? This is a book, and we describe FECRIS activities in five states, 5 countries. It's written by scholars, lawyers, and so on. And there's a book on France, a chapter on France and a chapter on Russia, where they describe these rehabilitation centers for followers of religious minorities to convert them back under constraint to the Orthodox religion. This is what the rehabilitation centers of FECRIS are. So Mr. Foutré is going to address the issue of FECRIS in Russia now. Thank you.